we are using a phased approach to repopulating campus that takes into account the reality and preparation that's been done here for our facilities, our classrooms, et cetera, to be prepared for students in appropriate social distancing. We've heard various aspects of that tonight. And another component that I'll take a minute to talk about is a set of data that has been compiled by Robin Lucchese, Gwen Pauley, Randy Shanata, and myself through a Cornell Summer Research Institute project over the summer. We recognized in the spring that the best data that Cornell could use to make decisions would be highly local targeted data. And we recognized that we quickly realized, as Nancy and others were looking at Lynn County Public Health, Iowa Public Health sources, et cetera, that the data in this pandemic, the situation was evolving so rapidly that it changed, its format changed, what data was available changed. And so what we did early this summer is Robin and Gwen began recording a number of parameters, hundreds of values every night, so that we have the data for Lynn County, Johnson County, as well as the two areas here in Eastern Iowa called Regional Medical Coordination Center 5 and 6. We felt that Eastern Iowa is more relevant data than, say, what's going on in Western Iowa, as well as this local Lynn County. And over the last several weeks, we've developed, consistent with a number of organizations, including the World Health Organization's, 3 main domains that we're paying attention to. Okay, so we're paying attention to the extent of spread of the disease locally. We're paying attention to the severity of the disease, as well as the availability of local hospital resources. And we're also paying attention, I guess I should say, to how these metrics intersect with one another. So I'll just very briefly say, in those 3 domains, there are 6 metrics we pay attention to. The positive test rate in Lynn County. So while it's certainly true that there have been more cases in Lynn County recently, a part of the reason for that versus, say, several weeks ago is that we're testing more. That's part of the story. It is also true that the positive test rate has increased significantly. And I'll come back to that specifically in just a moment. We've also been paying attention to the positive test rate in Johnson County, which we saw a significant spike in several weeks ago, and it's come back down significantly since then. We're using a simple schematic, green, yellow, and red, with coordinating thresholds between those. Green saying we're safe enough to move to the next phase. Yellow saying we need to pause, regroup, understand the data at a deeper level. Sometimes that means doing separate analyses to determine if that yellow is really a yellow-green or a yellow-red. And red meaning that we really need to take a step back, possibly even move backwards a phase. Okay. The third metric we're looking at is the hospital admissions versus discharges in the local regions. The fourth metric is the number of available hospital beds. The fifth is the number of available ventilators. And the sixth is the percent of COVID hospital patients who are in the ICU. And so 4 of those 6 metrics at this time are in the green zone. 1, the Lynn County positive test rate is at the border between the green and yellow zone, and the hospital admissions versus discharges is in our yellow zone. And so when we saw that, just to give you an example of how these metrics intersect, when we see that there have been, for example, about 30 more admissions versus discharges over the last 2 weeks in our region, we said, well, we need to really make sure there are sufficient number of beds and ventilators. And indeed, there are 360 ventilators at last check in this area of Iowa, and a very large number of available hospital beds, over 1,000 in fact. When it comes to Lynn County specifically, and we could talk about this in quite a lot of detail, the positive test rate has been as high in the past as well above 10%. It dropped down to a couple of a percent in June. We use a 14-day rolling average. And it's now climbed a little bit above 7%. So that's the key metric that we look at. We hear a lot of, say media reports about total number of cases, but we're really focused on that positive test rate. And the reason for that is that it gives us an indication, it summarizes both the availability of testing as well as the number of cases in the region. And so I'll just say 2 more things briefly. In addition to that positive test rate, we will have testing on campus. So that is above and beyond what that sort of the normally would be offered, right? And the second thing is that we are also tracking the cases specifically in the 52314 area right here around Mount Vernon, Iowa. And I think at last check, there were 7 active cases in this area.